My project this morning is to get these 4 raised beds, these wooden raised beds, all planted out with seeds. My first one here that I'm going to deal with is a bed that I grew hairy vetch in over the winter time. And a few weeks ago, Roger and I cut all of it and just laid it on top, and it has dried out really well, and it has become very crumbly, and so this makes a really good mulch, and it's going to break down and feed the soil more, because what I read is hairy vetch is really good for helping to condition the soil, and the nutrients that it keeps in its leaves. When it breaks down, it feeds the dirt. So what I have to do today in order for me to plant seeds in here, as you can see, the soil level has shrunk a little bit. So I've got to raise that soil level up. I've got a little bit of compost left in this barrel here. This is the last of what we had made. And so it's probably just a little less than half of this container full. And so I've got to spread this amongst 3 of these beds, because one of them down there on the end, I already put some in. So what I've got to do is I'm going to scrape this mulch off and put it in a container until I'm done planting my seeds. And after they've sprouted, I'm going to go ahead and spread this back over the top of the bed. It's 8 o'clock right now, and sorry, my camera keeps wobbling here. It's 8 o'clock right now, and I need to try to get this done as quickly as possible, because it's already 73 degrees out here, and it's going to be a warm day. Now I'm going to put a few shovels of this homemade compost in here just to recharge the dirt. Help replenish some of what last year's crop took out of the soil. I don't have a lot left, so if I feel like my soil level is still too low after putting this in, I'm going to have to put a bag of raised bed mix. But I'm just really glad I'm able to get some compost in here for the roots of the new plants. And there's no need to dig this in and turn the soil over. All the soil life down inside this bed will come up and receive the compost that's on the top surface. And it'll work its way down into the roots, into the root area. Yeah, and I do think that I'm going to put another bag of raised bed mix on top of this. And this is a 2 cubic foot bag. So right now I'm just pulling up the drip hose. So it's going to be higher, closer to the top of the soil. And I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit because this is my seed bed now. Pardon my squinting, but it's so bright out here. I was hoping I was out here early enough for this to not be such a problem, but I'm going to show you what I'm planting in this bed today. I've got these 6 Thai holy basil plants, and I'm going to put a little bit in each one of these beds. And then this bed is going to have Black Beauty zucchini, these little round squash called Ronde de Nice. And then I'm going to put some more bush beans in here. And in this bed, I'm going to do jade bush beans. And then on the trellis that goes between this bed and the next bed, I'm going to put these Kajari melons. And I've never grown these before, but I thought they were super cute. And they're little, small melons. I don't know. It looks to me like it might be similar to a honeydew or a cantaloupe, but we're going to see if we like them. I've heard good things about it, and so we're going to give it a try. And so that's going to go on that first arch right there. So I'm going to put a seed on, or a couple seeds on this side and a couple seeds on the other side in the other bed to grow up on that arch. Basically, I'm just going to follow the directions on the seed packet for how deep to plant them. But I'm going to use my own judgment on spacing based on how big I know that a squash plant usually gets. So this Ronde Nice says 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. The beans say 1/2 inch to 1 inch. The Kajari melon says 1/2 inch. And the zucchini says 1/2 inch to 1 inch. But I'm going to put the Thai holy basil in first. I want to be able to plant around the plants rather than plant around the seeds. So in this cell, let's see, can you see that? In this cell here, I have 2 plants here. So I'm going to attempt to separate these and get 2 plants out of this. Now I'm going to go for 2 zucchini plants. So I'm going to put 3 seeds about here, just in case one, I just want to make sure that the seeds germinate. So I'll cut off any extra plants if they all germinate, because I really only want 1 there. And then I'll do 3 seeds right here. And the zucchini is going to grow, I don't know, it kind of bushes out quite a bit. So that's why I'm putting it a little closer to the edge, so it kind of hang over a little bit. It doesn't need a ton of room for roots, it just needs a ton of room for its leaves. And this Ronde de Nice squash, I've never grown it. Really don't know how big it's going to get. Its suggested spacing is the same as the zucchini, which is 12 to 24 inches apart. So I'm guessing they're probably going to be very similar in size. So I think I'll put 2 plants in this bed. Put one in this corner here. Yeah, and we'll do one in this corner. I don't want to get too close to the trellis because the melon is going to need some space. Even though it's going to grow up on the trellis, there's some that's going to, some of the plant is going to be in the bed too. It's unavoidable. But I will try to train as much of it up on the trellis as possible, but I don't want to crowd it too much. And I don't want to crowd the roots. So we're going to have 2 of the little round squash here, and then 2 of the zucchinis there. And then green beans don't take up a ton of space, especially the bush beans. So I'm going to just kind of, I think I'm going to focus on the front of the bed here at first and put some on each side of this holy basil. We'll put a few, I think, in this row. That I'm trying to plant near the drip line just so the water can get as close to the plants as possible. Although it does spread out pretty well up and under the surface of the soil. But I don't want to get too close to the middle because we'll have the zucchinis coming up on each side, and they're going to fill in that middle area of the bed. They're going to expand this away. So I'll do a few more on this end. I've lost count about how many I put in here so far, but that's okay. And if any are in the way, I'll just pull them up because there's going to be plenty of beans here. It's pretty easy to plant seeds when the bed is all ready and the soil is all good. There's no digging, no tilling, nothing like that. And these should get a pretty good root system on them. The soil is very, very loose. And now for the Kajari melons. I do not know how many plants to go for here, so I'm just going to try it, trial and error, and see what works this year. We don't even know if we're going to like these or not, but it's worth a try. There's not a lot of seeds in this packet. Look, that's how many seeds are in the packet. Not very many. I think that I will plant 3. I think I'll go for 3 plants. So 1 here in the corner, and then 1 in the middle. And then 1 over here in this corner. And if any of these seeds don't germinate, I'll go ahead and plop in another seed. I'll save a couple of these seeds just in case. Sorry for the sniffling. Every time I start working out here, my nose gets sniffly. Okay, so don't want to forget my little plant tag so I can remember what I planted. I also put it in my calendar, but I like to have something that I can see out here. The drip system is really great for watering already established plants, but when you first plant them, they do need a little extra special care, especially if you're germinating seeds. You have to keep the soil moist on the surface to get the seeds to germinate. And if that requires you to hand water 3 times a day or 4 times a day, whatever it takes to keep that top soil moist, then that's what you do. But once those roots start going down, the drip system is really the best choice in our situation to keep things watered. We are so dry and hot here in the summertime. It's really honestly hard to water too much. And with the good drainage on these raised beds, the soil or the water drains away pretty quickly. So they're really not sitting there in a lot of water. You can see how quickly this soil absorbs this water here. And then as soon as I start seeing some germination in here, when most everything is up, I'm going to go ahead and put that mulch, that mulch that we grew for this bed. I'm going to go ahead and put that on top to help the soil retain the moisture, so that we don't have to water as often. Trying to be as responsible as we can with water usage. The reason that we're not putting the mulch back on right now before the seeds germinate is I don't want them to have any problems trying to reach the sunlight when they first come out. Okay, so that bed is done. I don't think I'm going to put anything else in there, except if I have any spare room, I'll probably put some borage in there because it really draws the bees, and there's a lot of different kind of squash plants in there, so squash really needs the bees for pollination, so that I don't have to come out here and hand pollinate, which I will if I have to, but it's really hard getting the timing all right with the male flowers and the female flowers, and it's just, I would really like nature to take care of itself on this one. So I try to get as much things like borage here as possible. So as you can see right here by this bed, we have a little borage plant growing right outside the bed, and we're going to leave that there because it's doing a good job, or it will do a good job as soon as it starts flowering, of bringing in the bees without taking up my bed space. But I don't mind giving a little bit of space. And you can see on this side of the bed, there's a little borage plant growing amongst the weeds there. We'll pull the weeds out and leave the plant. Here's a borage plant up against this bed that we left, and it's doing really good. You see the blue flowers, and it's nice that it's right up against this bed that's going to have cucumbers and all the things that need pollinators. So here is a borage plant that's done, and I'll be tearing this out and putting it in the compost. But as soon as I tear this out, new ones are going to grow in its place because it has reseeded itself already. And this last bed here has a ton of volunteer borage, which I'm going to have to take some out. I'm probably going to end up feeding it to the chickens and putting some in the compost because it's just too much. It's taking up too much space. It's a nice little plant growing down here on the ground. And that's nice because I'm not purposely watering it. It just gets the extra water that comes underneath the beds from regular watering. And then because I put compost in this bed already, I have a ton of volunteer tomatoes. And I have got to decide what to do with these things. All these volunteer tomatoes, I have no idea what kind they are. I don't know if they're determinate or indeterminate. And I am a little concerned because they look like they've got some blight on them. See all that speckling? So I'm thinking I may just tear these out and make room for what I want to plant in here. But I'm not worried about tearing out the borage. It's very prolific. It grows fast. It reseeds quickly. But it is nice having it in a lot of different places. You see that bee there? That's why I have the borage. Let's see if the camera picks that up. He's on this side. So this second bed and this third bed here is where we had the garlic, and we've already harvested that. I just put that video out recently. But what I did was I had some extra onions. I have my ongoing little onion experiment. And so there were some empty spaces and I put the onions there. So this is what size these are. These are the ones that I started in the house in pots in January. And then over here in this bed are the ones I started outside here. These are the ones I started outside in November in pots. And they're the same variety, but look at the bulbs that these are getting that the other ones are not. So far, everywhere that I've planted all these onions, the ones that I started outside in November have bigger bulbs than the ones that I planted inside in January. And it's possible it's because of the sunlight that they received, the cold temperatures that they received. I don't know. But what I'm waiting for now is to see if these go to flower before they're ready to harvest. And also I want to see if the ones I started in the house go to flower before it's time to harvest. Because I really don't want that to happen. Because once they go to flower and produce seed, then they do not store as well or for as long. So, and here you go. This third bed here, it has a little borage plant over here. And of course, that one's going to definitely have to come out because the plan is to plant stuff for this trellis here. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to work around these onions. But if any of them are in the way of what I'm wanting to do, I'm just going to go ahead and harvest them and eat them the way they are, because you can eat onions at any stage. They're delicious. It's just if you're trying to get big bulbs so that you get more per onion, you leave them in there until they've grown bigger. But we can certainly eat these as green onions. But I'm going to try to work around and leave some of them in there just because I want to see how the onions do in the different areas of the garden that I've put them in. So the plan in this bed is to put more of the Thai holy basil, and then also we're going to finish this trellis off with the Kajari melon on this side, and then we're also going to put these cucumbers called dar cucumbers. They are a very small plant compared to most cucumbers, more of a bush variety. And it's going to produce smaller cucumbers. I'm just giving this a try. We really enjoyed our striped Armenians last year, and we're going to grow more of those this year up there on the other arch on the hill, on the entrance to the garden, the uphill garden. But I'm just excited to try these. And then my daughter-in-law got me some of these emerald okras. I've never heard of them. And so even though I planted okra on the hill up there by my peppers, I wasn't sure because it was seeds that I saved from last year. So I'm not sure if they're even gonna germinate. They haven't germinated yet. I haven't given up on them totally, but I thought it doesn't hurt to put in a different variety in these beds just to see how they do. And then the other trellis on the other side of this bed, we're going to do these Canada crookneck squash. And these were awesome squash. We grew these up on the hill last year, and we got a lot of them. And it's more of a winter squash, but I'm looking forward to that. It's going to go right here. It's going to go on that trellis there. And so the one right here, this trellis is where we're finishing off the Kajari melons. So here's what I have to do with the soil in this bed. As you can see, we do have a mulch on the top of the bed, but this is the leftover mulch that was there. We put it there in the fall. When we planted the garlic, we put a bunch of crushed up leaves from the trees on this bed and the next bed. And they're partially broken down. They're much smaller than the mulch that you saw on the first bed. So I'm thinking about just leaving that there and covering over it with some of my fresh compost, and that'll recharge this bed. And I'm pretty happy with the height of the soil, so I don't think we're going to need to add any bagged raised bed mix on this. I'm just going to put some of our compost, and I think that's all we're going to need to do here. So hopefully that's enough to get me a good seed bed, because it's really hard to plant seeds in mulch. So hopefully that's enough to give me a good seed bed to get started, because that's all I can afford to put on this bed if I'm going to save any for the next bed. I'm going to spread this out lightly over the top. Okay, so again, here's the Thai holy basil. I'm going to put one right here, kind of mimicking what I did on the other bed. And I'm going to put one right here. And we're going to do the same thing we did on the other side with the Kajari melons. So now we're going to put them on this side of the trellis, and we're going to do 3 plants. Canada crooknecks, I'm going to put over here by this trellis. I have another video showing us putting these arched hog panel trellises up, if you guys want to go watch that. Now these cucumbers, supposedly the plants don't get huge, but I think I should still allow them a little space. So I'm thinking maybe 2 plants right in the center. I think I'll put one here. I'm going to do 3 seeds just to make sure at least one of them germinates. And then I think I've got enough space to put one here without having to move an onion. And these onions will be harvested before these plants get too big. Let's make sure these are the first ones that are harvested. And then the okra. The okra says to plant it 3/4 of an inch deep. The okra doesn't take a lot of horizontal space because it's usually just one stalk, and it grows taller. It'll grow above the other things that are in this bed. I think I'll put 2 plants here on this edge and 2 plants on that edge. Do 2 seeds here. 2 seeds here. And I think I'll do 2 seeds, 2 plants over here. So I'll plant 2 seeds each right here. Okra, when it starts producing, you have to really stay on it because it produces fast and they grow real quick. And if you don't pick them when they're small, they get very, very hard and you can't eat them. So they can go from small to big in one day. So pretty much when you're growing okra, you got to check it every day. And if you think it might be ready to harvest, harvest it. The next day is probably going to be too woody to eat. So we learned that last year. So this bed is already planted. Put my little tags in there. One over here for the Canada crookneck. And we'll put the dark cucumber here. So everything's planted in here now. It is 9:30, so it's been an hour and a half. Took me an hour and a half, and I take my time nowadays on anything I do. My body just isn't what it used to be. So it is now 83 degrees. I think I'm gonna stop here today because it's starting to get warm. I need to eat some breakfast. Lucky's gonna go get groomed today at noon. So he should be feeling a little cooler after we're done with this. But it's getting a little warm and I'm just out of energy. So I'm gonna continue this video probably in the morning. I would do it this evening when it gets cool, but we've got a Bible study for tonight. And so I'm going to have to get out here in the morning and do the next 2 beds.